the world fades into stillness as you begin to drift. The night settles around you like a quiet blanket, and in this stillness a single story begins to glow. It drifts in softly as if carried on a warm breeze from a faraway field. And before you even realize it, the world around you relaxes, leaning gently toward rest, inviting you to follow. Imagine just for a moment that your thoughts are stepping barefoot onto cool earth, the kind found at the edge of an ancient rice field. The soil is soft, the air is warm, and everything hums with the calm rhythm of a land that has known patience for thousands of years. Nothing rushes here. Even time seems to shrug its shoulders and take smaller steps. We begin our quiet journey in a landscape shaped by water, soil, and the simple perseverance of people who spent their days tending tiny green shoots. There is no need to hurry. This story unfolds the way rice grows, steadily, gently, insistently, and always in its own perfect rhythm. As the scene expands, you may picture broad, shimmering paddies stretching toward a pale horizon. The water reflects the sky like a mirror that forgot it had a job to do, lying there casually, letting clouds drift lazily across its surface. You might even notice a frog somewhere in the distance contributing a single half-hearted croak before deciding it too deserves a nap. This is the world in which an ancient civilization quietly took shape, not with the clang of metal or the rise of towering stone structures, but with the whisper of wind brushing over young rice stalks. Every movement was small, almost unnoticeable, but together they formed a way of life that endured for millennia. Here, people learned to listen to the land rather than command it. They watched water flow, not because they were philosophical, but because water had the stubborn personality of someone who liked going wherever it pleased. Guiding it into fields was both a science and a gentle negotiation. And somehow through this slow cooperation, rice grew in such abundance that communities flourished. In this quiet world, life was woven from steady rhythms. Days began with the soft splash of feet entering a paddy and ended with stories told under the dim glow of oil lamps. Conversations were unhurried. Even disagreements were softened by the sheer impossibility of shouting while knee-deep in mud. And walking home after work, there was always the comfort of hearing water trickle through channels built with careful, patient hands. It was a civilization built not on conquest, but on cultivation. A harmony between human effort and the simple truth that nature tends to reward those who move with, rather than against, its gentle currents. The farmers of this world probably didn't think of themselves as architects of civilization. They were just making sure tonight's dinner existed. And yet, unknowingly, they shaped the cultural and economic foundations of entire regions. As night wraps itself more securely around you, you might sense the calming consistency of their world, a place where seasons cycled, rice sprouted, and life unfolded with a softness that invites rest. The story you are drifting into isn't loud. It doesn't demand attention. It simply welcomes you the way a quiet field welcomes a breeze. Let your breathing fall into the rhythm of the landscape. Let your mind settle like silt in a slow river. The ancient wet rice world awaits not with urgency, but with ease, and perhaps a light chuckle from a farmer who long ago discovered that muddy feet are good for the soul. And so, with a tranquil heart and a mind slowly loosening its grip on the day, we drift deeper into the origins of this gentle civilization. The ancient wet rice civilization, though humble in appearance, became one of Asia's defining cultural and agricultural foundations. Emerging thousands of years ago along the fertile expanse of the Yangtze River basin, it developed gradually, nurtured by communities who learned the art of working with water, soil, and seasonal rhythms. As these techniques matured, they traveled southward into regions of Southeast Asia, eventually flourishing across what is now Vietnam, a land where rice fields would one day become an unmistakable signature of daily life. Central to this civilization was the mastery of wet rice farming. The people refined their methods until they could coax abundant harvests from landscapes that required both effort and adaptability. Their irrigation systems, though simple by modern standards, were remarkably effective, channeling water with quiet precision. Over time, the tools they fashioned, from bronze blades to handheld harvesting implements, grew more efficient, allowing communities not only to sustain themselves but to create a surplus. This abundance laid the groundwork for population growth, social organization, and the stability that comes from having enough food stored for the seasons ahead. From these steady roots, a durable cultural identity emerged. Villages formed, communities strengthened, and generations passed down techniques that shaped everything from daily routines to broader economic structures. It was a civilization that grew from the ground up, literally built on patience, cooperation, and a deep respect for the natural world. Chapter 1: Origins. Beside the gentle waters. The story begins where the world feels soft, quiet, and unhurried, in a place where water curls gently around the edges of the earth and light falls in slow, golden strokes. If you listen closely, you might hear the faintest whisper of an ancient breeze drifting across open fields, carrying with it the calm memory of a civilization that once settled beside peaceful waters. There is nothing rushed here. Everything unfolds with the tender rhythm of a breath that has finally decided to rest. Long ago in the vast expanse of Asia, people found themselves drawn to the shimmering stretches of land where water flowed freely and life could take root with ease. Along the great Yangtze River, the earth offered itself like an open palm, rich, dark, and fertile, inviting early communities to begin shaping their days around what the land quietly promised. They observed the seasonal floods, not with fear, but with the gentle curiosity of someone watching a sleepy river rearrange its blankets. And from that soft exchange between people and nature, the earliest foundations of the wet rice civilization emerged. Picture the landscape as it might have been. Wide water channels reflecting the sky like long, polished ribbons, and clusters of simple dwellings settled nearby, their inhabitants rising each morning to the soft squelch of wet earth beneath their feet. The world they lived in was peaceful, shaped more by patience than by power. There were no towering monuments, no clamorous streets, only the steady rhythm of daily tending, the swish of hands brushing through water, and the whisper of seedlings being placed gently into warm mud. From the Yangtze Basin, this gentle way of life began to spread southward. Perhaps it drifted like pollen carried on a wandering breeze, or perhaps it was carried by families who simply followed the path of rivers and valleys, seeking places where their rice could grow tall and strong. Whatever the reason, the knowledge and rhythm of wet rice farming moved gradually through Asia, taking root in lush lowlands and quiet river plains. As it traveled, it adapted, settling into the contours of new landscapes the way a calm stream finds its way around stones. In Southeast Asia, the climate welcomed this tradition with open arms. Warm rains fell in generous sheets, and the soil soaked them up with the enthusiasm of someone given an unexpected holiday. The land almost seemed to sigh with relief, ready to cradle yet another generation of rice fields. And among the places where this civilization found one of its strongest homes was Vietnam, a land where green paddies would one day stretch as far as the eye could wander, shimmering like giant mirrors laid lovingly upon the earth. Life in these early communities developed slowly, gently, guided by the seasons and the dependable cycle of water. At dawn, the fields glowed softly beneath pale sunlight, and people walked barefoot along narrow dikes, their reflections wavering in the shallow pools beside them. Conversations were light, unhurried, drifting through the morning air like tiny boats carried along by a lazy current. Perhaps someone would joke about slipping in the mud again, an event so common it hardly counted as news, or someone else might laugh softly at a stubborn water buffalo who refused to move until it had finished contemplating life. In this world, humor was subtle but ever present. After all, when you spend your days ankle-deep in mud, there is little room for pride and plenty of space for laughter. People learned quickly that mud has a special talent for appearing exactly where you don't want it, on clothes, on tools, on faces, turning even the most serious farmer into an accidental comedian. And somehow, that shared, gentle amusement became stitched into the culture. A reminder that even the simplest work could be softened by a smile. But beneath the humor was a steady, grounded way of living. Communities worked together, shared harvests, and built their homes near the fields that sustained them. These settlements grew around the calm presence of water, forming clusters of families who learned to trust the reliability of the land. Life became anchored in place, stable and familiar, with each generation adding their own quiet footsteps to the well-worn paths between rice paddies. At night, lamps would glow faintly through the mist, and the fields would rest beneath the soft blanket of darkness. Crickets would hum their sleepy melodies, and the gentle slosh of water moving through irrigation channels created a lullaby older than memory itself. People drifted into sleep with the sense that the land would still be there in the morning, waiting with the same patient smile. This shift to a settled agricultural lifestyle marked a turning point. No longer wandering from place to place, early Asian communities began weaving their identities into the soil itself. The stable rhythm of rice farming allowed families to grow, villages to form, and traditions to deepen. They found comfort not just in the abundance of food, but in the reassuring predictability of routine, a life shaped by the rise of the sun, the movement of water, and the soft rustle of rice stems swaying in the breeze. This was not a dramatic rise of civilization, nor a story filled with thundering events. Instead, it was a quiet blossoming, slow, natural, and deeply human. A civilization grew from the simplest elements: water, earth, gentle hands, and a calm determination to make each day a little more secure than the one before. And as the wet rice tradition spread further across the lands, it carried with it a sense of peaceful purpose, an invitation to live in harmony with the world, to embrace the comforting rhythms of nature, and to find joy even in muddy footsteps. As the wet rice lifestyle traveled deeper into Southeast Asia, its rhythms settled into the hearts of the people who lived near the waterways and fertile plains. Villages appeared not with loud proclamations, but the way small islands slowly emerge at low tide, softly, quietly, almost shyly. Families built their homes along gentle slopes and beside soft, winding streams, weaving their daily lives into the contours of the landscape. The earth welcomed their presence, and the people in turn shaped their days around the reassuring cycles of nature. Life in these communities was guided by a steady harmony. People woke with the first hints of dawn when the world seemed to stretch lazily before opening its eyes. They stepped onto narrow dikes, still cool with morning dew, listening to the soft squish under their feet, an oddly comforting sound that anyone familiar with rice farming can recognize instantly. It was a rhythm, a texture, a tiny reminder that the land and the people were endlessly connected. The water in the fields mirrored the sky, turning each paddy into a dreamy fragment of the heavens. From above, the fields looked like a mosaic of pale blues and greens, rippling with the slightest breeze. Birds glided gently over the surface, occasionally dipping down for a curious peek at their own reflections. If one bird lingered too long, another might land beside it, perhaps to ask in its own quiet way why they were both awake so early. The people found comfort in these simple moments. While they planted seedlings in neat, peaceful rows, they shared small stories. Nothing grand, nothing hurried. Someone might mention how their water buffalo had refused to step into the field that morning, insisting on finishing an important grass inspection. Someone else would smile warmly at the idea, remembering how they once had to bargain with a particularly stubborn buffalo who seemed convinced that the mud was too cold for its delicate hooves. Life moved gently like this, softened by companionship and the shared laughter of people who understood that nature always had its own plans. What truly defined these early rice-growing societies was the sense of rootedness that settled into each home. For the first time in their history, many families stayed in one place long enough to watch children grow up, to see trees they planted reach across the sky, and to build memories held securely by the land beneath their feet. Stability became a quiet treasure. With each season, they learned more about the soil, the weather, the subtle signals of plants, and the satisfying hush of water flowing exactly where it needed to go. As generations passed, the villages expanded like soft ripples spreading out across a still pond. Knowledge was passed down not through strict lessons, but through simple, shared tasks. A grandparent might kneel beside a grandchild in the mud, guiding their tiny hands to plant the first seedling. The child would giggle as mud splashed, and the elder would smile knowingly, remembering that rice cultivation always begins with a little mess and ends with a great meal. Life at night held its own magic. The daylight gradually slipped behind distant hills, and the fields shifted from sparkling mirrors to gently breathing shadows. Lanterns glowed in small houses, their light flickering in a slow, steady dance that seemed to say, "Rest now. The land is resting too." Insects hummed in soft harmony, creating a natural lullaby that lulled entire villages into easy sleep. Even the frogs croaked more slowly, as if they too had decided to whisper. It was in these calm landscapes that culture began to take shape. Community gatherings were held beneath the open sky, with people sitting on woven mats, sharing food, telling gentle stories, and enjoying the comfort of being together. Music drifted through the night, not loud, but low and warm, wrapped around the soft beating of drums or the wooden clack of simple instruments. The rhythm blended with the rustling of wind through rice stalks, creating an atmosphere so peaceful that even the stars seemed to lean closer to listen. And then gradually, something remarkable emerged from this quiet, grounded way of life. The deep connection between people and their environment gave birth to a cultural identity rooted in patience, cooperation, and respect for the rhythms of the natural world. The bond with water shaped the way villages were arranged, the way homes were built, and even the way people walked, carefully balancing on narrow dikes without falling in, though most people did fall in at least once a week. After all, slipping into knee-deep water was practically a rite of passage. This way of living left long-lasting marks across the lands it touched. Where wet rice agriculture thrived, communities grew more stable, populations increased, and societies slowly grew more complex. People discovered that when the land produces more food than a family needs, there is room for creativity, trade, craftsmanship, and celebration. With each successful harvest, life felt a little fuller, a little brighter, even if everyone still ended the day with muddy feet. And so the civilization that began beside gentle waters continued to flourish, expanding its reach across Asia and shaping the destiny of entire regions. It grew not through conquest or glory, but through quiet perseverance, soft laughter, and the simple act of planting seeds in warm earth. In this softness, in this calm, in this world where water and soil were patient teachers, the ancient wet rice civilization found its beginning, a beginning that would echo gently through history, carrying with it the tender reminder that great civilizations can rise from the humblest fields, one peaceful day at a time. Chapter 2. The Rhythm of Planting and Plowing. Ancient Wet Rice Techniques. There is a moment just before dawn stretches its quiet hand over the horizon when the world seems to pause in a soft breath. It is in that stillness, that tender hush, where the story of ancient rice cultivation feels most at home. If you close your eyes, you might sense the gentle pulse of a land waking slowly, as though the earth itself is stretching beneath the cool blanket of morning mist. In this serene hour, life in the ancient wet rice world begins its steady rhythm, calm, unhurried, and deeply comforting. The people of long ago moved with a grace that came not from elegance but from familiarity. Their days unfolded in cycles as gentle as the tides, guided by practices that had been passed from hand to hand like whispered melodies of wisdom. The techniques of wet rice agriculture they developed were not loud achievements. They emerged quietly, shaped by patient observation and the steady companionship between humans, soil, and water. Imagine a farmer stepping into a shallow paddy at sunrise. The water ripples softly around their feet, warm from the night's embrace. Each movement is slow and fluid, almost like part of a dance rehearsed over centuries. Their reflections tremble gently on the water's skin, stretching and shrinking as they move. You can almost hear the soft hum of their breath, mingling with the faint chorus of waking birds. There is no rush, no urgency, only the calm certainty that rice grows best when guided by hands that understand its quiet nature. To prepare the land, early communities relied on simple yet ingenious methods. The soil had to be softened, smoothed, and leveled so water could flow evenly. It was a careful craft, almost meditative. Farmers used wooden tools first, then gradually tools with bronze edges that glimmered softly under the sun, as though proud to participate in the work. Plowing wasn't a quick task, but the slow turning of earth carried a comfort of its own, like folding warm blankets in winter. The buffalo, meanwhile, contributed to the process with a charming mixture of cooperation and stubbornness, sometimes plowing diligently, and other times refusing to move until bribed with a particularly delicious patch of grass. Once the fields were prepared, the next step unfolded with the calm precision of a lullaby: planting. Seedlings, young and fragile, were cradled between fingers and gently pressed into the mud. Each shoot stood like a tiny green promise, ready to sway in the breeze. The act itself was a soothing repetition: bend, plant, breathe, and move forward. It created a rhythm so steady that even the mind began to drift peacefully, as though rocking in a cradle of warm sunlight and watery reflections. And so, the planting phase flowed into the growing season. Days passed quietly. Water filled the paddies, curling around the seedlings like a protective hand. Farmers monitored the fields with the keen awareness of people who had lived close to nature their whole lives. They knew the meaning behind each shift in the water's color, the way leaves tilted themselves toward the sun, the pace at which stalks stretched taller. Their attention was not rushed. It was gentle and steady. Just as one listens to the breathing of a sleeping child, they listened to the fields, softly, patiently, lovingly. The cycle of rice cultivation continued in this slow, nurturing manner. Weeding was done by hand, often with a quiet smile, at the thought that weeds, too, seemed eager to join the community. The farmers would calmly remove them, maintaining the balance of the field, while exchanging small jokes about how persistent those tiny intruders could be. Some days, the weeding became an opportunity to appreciate the reflections in the water, to watch dragonflies skim across the surface like little sparks of blue and gold. Other days, it was simply a time to enjoy each other's company while sharing simple stories. As the rice grew stronger, the stalks began to sway in the wind, whispering secrets to one another. The fields transformed into shimmering seas of green, rising and falling with the soft breeze. When the sun dipped low, turning the sky into shades of peach and lavender, the paddies glowed as though lit from within. It was a quiet beauty, one that required no grandeur, only a peaceful heart to notice it. Harvest season arrived with the same gentle certainty as every other part of the cycle. The rice, now golden and heavy with grains, bowed gracefully, almost as if thanking the farmers for their care. People would step once more into the fields, their movements steady and soft. Harvesting tools whispered through the air, cutting the mature stalks with a rhythm so comforting, it felt like a lullaby made of rustling leaves and warm sunlight. The harvested stalks were gathered into bundles, carried with patient steps across the narrow paths. Laughter drifted between farmers as they teased each other about who dropped more bundles or who slipped into the mud. Because yes, someone always slipped. In these moments, you can almost hear the gentle humor of the past, where people joked that they saw the fields more often than they saw each other's faces. Through all of these cycles, plowing, planting, tending, and harvesting, the ancient world shaped a harmonious system that sustained not just crops but communities and generations. Everything depended on steady cooperation, shared knowledge, and a deep understanding of the land. And everything in return offered a peaceful rhythm that wrapped itself gently around daily life. This was the heart of ancient rice farming techniques: calm, patient, quietly joyful, and filled with the kind of simple beauty that could guide the mind softly into sleep. As the season drifted further into its warm embrace, the rice fields matured under the quiet guidance of farmers who seemed to understand the land the way one understands an old friend, gently, patiently, without ever needing to rush. The fields, once tiny beds of green seedlings, now stood tall and lush, each stalk swaying with the soft confidence of something that had grown with love. In this serene world, time itself felt unhurried. Even the sun appeared to rise a little slower, taking its time to warm the dew-kissed fields. Morning light shimmered on the surface of the paddies, creating delicate patterns that danced with each passing breeze. Standing in the water, the farmers felt the familiar touch of mud between their toes, a sensation so constant that many joked they could recognize their own fields simply by the way the mud greeted them. After all, when you've walked the same paddies for years, the earth starts to recognize you too. The techniques of rice cultivation had been refined over countless generations, each step shaping a way of life that flowed with natural harmony. Irrigation, for instance, became almost an art form. Water channels were dug with deliberate care, guiding streams into the paddies so gently that the water seemed to glide rather than rush. Farmers often compared the movement of water to the movement of a sleepy cat, slow, graceful, and absolutely uninterested in hurrying for anyone. And truly, there was beauty in that pace. It encouraged calmness, patience, and a kind of meditative attentiveness. Maintaining these irrigation systems required both skill and intuition. Farmers learned to read the signs of the land, the slight tilt of a field edge, the murmur of flowing water, the tiny swirl that formed when currents shifted. They adjusted pathways with careful hands, never forcing the water but nudging it lovingly, almost as one might guide a child who has wandered off the trail. The water in return nourished the rice with steady devotion, filling each field like a gentle exhale. As the rice plants thickened, farmers kept tending them with rhythmic consistency. Weeding, though repetitive, became a soothing act, a quiet communion between hands and earth. Bent over the fields, people talked softly, sharing stories about their day, or laughing gently at the latest antics of their farm animals. One might mention a buffalo that had wandered into the neighbor's yard, looking for a second breakfast, while another described how their duck had developed the heroic and entirely unnecessary habit of guarding their sandals. In these peaceful exchanges, humor flowed as lightly as the breeze across the paddies. With each passing day, the rice plants edged closer to maturity. Their colors shifted slowly from tender green to deep emerald, then finally to golden hues that ripened under the sun. The fields glowed like soft, warm blankets spread across the landscape, inviting the eye to rest on their gentle undulations. Even those who worked the land daily were not immune to its quiet beauty. Many times farmers paused simply to breathe in the shimmering calm, feeling the world settle around them in a perfect stillness. As harvest season approached, the air seemed to hum with anticipation, not loud or rushed, but like a soft reminder whispered by the wind. The grains grew heavy, bending the stalks under their weight. To the farmers, this gentle bowing of the rice was a sign of gratitude, a small thank you from the earth itself. They prepared for the harvest with the same unhurried care that marked every part of their year. When the time arrived, families entered the fields together, their feet sinking softly into the familiar mud. Harvesting tools glided through the stalks with a whispering sound like a lullaby made of swaying leaves. Each cut carried the memory of the season's work, the early mornings, the muddy slips, the shared laughter, and the unspoken companionship between people and land. Bundles of rice were gathered and tied, stacked carefully along the dikes. Children helped by carrying small bundles, occasionally dragging them with exaggerated struggle to earn sympathetic smiles. Elders supervised with warm amusement, offering gentle corrections and the occasional teasing remark. These moments were woven with affection, the kind that deepens naturally when generations work side by side. Once the rice was brought home, the next stages of drying and processing unfolded with the same steady rhythm. Grains were spread across mats under the sun, turning into shimmering fields of gold that rustled softly whenever the wind sighed. The aroma of drying rice drifted lazily through the village, a comforting scent that promised meals, warmth, and the reassuring continuity of life. In the evenings, after the work was done and the fields grew quiet again, families gathered outside their homes. Lamps glowed softly, lighting the cool air with a warm flicker, reminiscent of fireflies dancing near the water's edge. People shared meals, stories, and laughter, sometimes imitating the clumsy slipping and sliding that had happened during the day. It was said, half seriously, that if someone went a full harvest without falling once, it was probably only because no one saw it happen. Through these gentle rituals, the rhythm of rice cultivation shaped not just the land, but the character of the people themselves. It nurtured patience, cooperation, and an appreciation for the quiet wonders of daily life. It taught that growth, whether for rice or for people, does not need to be rushed. That beauty can be found in repetition, comfort in routine, joy in simple acts, and that sometimes the most meaningful stories come not from grand events, but from the steady heartbeat of living close to the earth. The ancient farmers may never have imagined that their quiet, muddy routines would one day be studied with admiration. To them, it was simply life, familiar, soothing, and deeply woven with the land's gentle rhythms. But the world they created, step by soft step, became the foundation of vibrant cultures across Asia. Their rhythm of planting and plowing echoed through time, a peaceful melody that still lingers today in every rice field that sways beneath the sun. And as you picture those fields now, the golden stalks, the shimmering water, the soft laughter carried by the breeze, you may feel your own breath slowing, your mind settling, your body easing into a calm as natural as the earth itself. A rhythm as tender as rice growing. A rhythm as steady as footsteps in the mud. A rhythm inviting you gently toward rest. Chapter 3. Guiding Water to the Fields. gentle art of ancient irrigation. There is a softness in the way water moves at dawn, a quiet unfolding of ripples that seem to breathe along with the earth. If you stand beside an old rice field in your imagination, before the sun has fully risen, you might feel that tender breath brushing against your skin like a whispered lullaby. It is in this world of early light and drifting mist that the story of ancient irrigation begins, slowly, peacefully, without any hurry at all. Long ago, when people first settled near rivers and low valleys, they learned that water did not simply come and go as it pleased, though it certainly behaved that way at times. It wandered, meandered, paused, and sulked in muddy corners, and yet, with enough patience, they discovered they could guide it gently, persuading it to flow where the rice needed it most. They did not force water into obedience, they simply invited it, the way one might coax a shy friend to join a quiet evening walk. This invitation took the form of small channels, humble muong that wound their way from river to field like silver threads sewn through green cloth. These channels were dug by hand, shaped with care and the occasional sigh when a stubborn patch of soil resisted. But the people persisted, smoothing the earth until the water could pass in a tranquil rhythm. When the first flow trickled through, it was a moment of soft triumph. Not loud cheers, but quiet nods, content smiles, and perhaps someone wiping sweat from their brow while pretending they weren't proud. Alongside the channels ran the bow, the raised edges of earth that bordered the fields. These weren't just barriers, they were guardians of the water's path. Carefully packed and shaped, they held the shimmering pools in place, ensuring each paddy received the right amount of moisture. When villagers walked along these edges, balancing with the slow precision of tightrope walkers, they learned the fine art of staying upright while carrying baskets, tools, and occasionally a napping child. Many would laugh at themselves when they slipped, not because falling into the mud was dramatic, but because it was so delightfully common. Further away stood the Jay, the embankments that stretched like gentle arms protecting entire communities, built from layer upon layer of earth, strengthened slowly over time. These embankments guided the river's seasonal moods. During calm months, they sat quietly, basking under the sun like sleepy giants. But in times of rising water, they held firm, allowing farmers to rest easy, knowing their fields would not drown under the sudden whims of the river. The entire irrigation system, the muong, the bow, the jay, worked together like a slow, soothing song. Water trickled, collected, and spread in a rhythm so steady it could lull even the busiest mind into stillness. The sound of it moving through the channels was not loud. It was the gentle murmur of life unfolding the way it always had. Some say that farmers could fall asleep just listening to the soft gurgle of water slipping past the fields. And perhaps that is why the ancient world felt so deeply tied to rest, patience, and quiet endurance. Bringing water to the fields was not merely a task, it was a craft, an art, a partnership between human hands and the natural world. Farmers watched the flow with the careful attention of someone reading a familiar poem. A small swirl might warn of a blockage. A lingering puddle might signal a dip that needed leveling. A faint change in the sound of running water could suggest that a stone had shifted somewhere downstream. They read every sign, not out of pressure, but out of gentle understanding, learned across generations. Their days were punctuated by this steady dialogue with water. In the mornings, they walked along the channels, adjusting small gates made of wood or stone, lifting them with the slow deliberateness of someone raising the lid of a sleepy pot. The water responded immediately, not explosively, but with a soft willingness, flowing into new spaces as though stretching after a long nap. Farmers often joked that water behaved better than buffalo, for at least water didn't wander off in the middle of work. As the fields filled, the paddies transformed into mirrors of the sky. Clouds drifted lazily across their surfaces, broken only by the tiny waves made when frogs leapt or when farmers' feet dipped into the mud. Children sometimes leaned over the edges to see their faces in the water, only to giggle when a dragonfly zipped past and startled their reflections. These small moments stitched warmth into daily life, turning work into something softer than duty. With water flowing where it needed to go, the rice grew with serene steadiness. Farmers believed that water carried not only nourishment but comfort, an invisible thread connecting all life in the fields. The paddies hummed with this quiet energy, each one a cradle holding thousands of seedlings that swayed gently under the breeze. The irrigation system kept them safe, stable, and well-fed, like a rhythmic heartbeat calming an entire landscape. And it was this rhythm, the Jujian, almost sleepy rhythm, that gave ancient rice cultivation its soul. Water arrived in soft waves, fields filled in peaceful silence, and life moved to the murmuring melody of slow currents. Even the busiest days felt gentle under the presence of flowing water, as though the land itself whispered, "Steady now. There is time for everything." With each generation, the techniques became more refined, more harmonious. Families taught their children how to open and close gates with care, how to read the faint tilt of water against the bow, how to listen to the playful trickle that revealed whether water was happy or secretly plotting to overflow. Humor softened the lessons. Someone always claimed they could sense when water was in a mood, and others would nod as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Through these daily practices, irrigation became not only a technology but a gentle way of living, one that blended patience, observation, and a touch of quiet amusement. Water had its path, and the people, in guiding it, discovered a tranquil rhythm that carried them through the seasons. And so begins the gentle art of guiding water, an art that lulled entire fields into calmness, an art that shaped the soul of ancient rice cultivation. As the days drifted on, the presence of water became more than a necessity. It became a companion. The farmers knew its moods as well as they knew the curve of the hills, or the whisper of wind brushing over the fields. Sometimes the water moved with cheerful eagerness, rushing forward as soon as the gates were lifted. Other times it lingered, swirling in lazy circles as if undecided about where to go. And on rare mornings, it behaved like a sleepy child, refusing to get out of bed, barely moving at all until the sun warmed its surface. These tiny quirks brought a soft humor into daily work. Farmers would tilt their heads at the puddles and say things like, "Ah, the water is thinking today," or "It must be enjoying the view too much to leave." The others would chuckle, not because the jokes were particularly clever, but because humor always flowed more easily in a world where mud clung to your ankles and reflections danced beside you. In this serene life, even the smallest moments became gentle stories worth sharing. But despite its playful nature, water always returned to its purpose. Its presence ensured the rice plants grew strong, standing steadily like rows of soft green soldiers guarding the quiet valleys. Under the patient touch of irrigation, each plant received the nourishment it needed. Water seeped into the soil, wrapping itself around the roots with a tenderness that made the rice sway, as if sighing in relief. The farmers watched this growth with quiet pride. They did not rush the plants, nor did they urge the water to move faster. Everything occurred in its own time. The ancient irrigation systems had taught them the art of letting life unfold at the pace nature preferred. They learned to trust the rhythm of the seasons, much like trusting the slow rise and fall of breath before sleep. Walking along the bow, the raised edges of the fields, became a daily ritual. These narrow paths required balance and familiarity. Farmers walked with a gentle sway, moving carefully so as not to slip into the water, though slipping was inevitable sometimes, and always resulted in soft laughter rather than embarrassment. Someone would fall in with a quiet splash, sit up blinking through the water, and the others would say, "Well, the field wanted to greet you personally today." And in that easy humor lived the warmth of community. As the water flowed from one paddy to another, the entire landscape seemed to breathe. The paddies sparkled under sunlight, glowing like open mirrors, laid gently upon the earth. Each one held a piece of the sky, fragmenting clouds into shifting patterns of light. Birds skimmed the surface, leaving faint ripples in their wake. Even the faint croak of distant frogs blended with the ambience, creating a melody that lulled the fields, and perhaps the farmers, into a state of serene tranquility. Whenever adjustments were needed, farmers moved quietly through the channels, lifting small gates or reshaping little mounds of earth. They took their time, never forcing anything. Their hands worked with a softness learned from years of listening to the silent teachings of water. If a channel overflowed, they did not scold it. Instead, they guided it back gently, because water, like people, responded better to kindness than force. These systems of irrigation were not built in a day. They evolved slowly, like lullabies carried from one generation to the next. Each family added something, another channel, a stronger bow, a sturdier jay. But more importantly, they passed down the patience required to maintain them. Young children learned how to listen to water before learning how to plant rice. They were taught to feel its movement, to understand its quiet language. Often elders would place a child's hand in the flowing stream and say, "Listen, this is the sound of the field waking." And the child, wide-eyed, would nod solemnly, even if they didn't fully understand yet. Beyond their practical purpose, the waterways shaped how communities lived and connected. Villages were arranged around the flow of water, and people gathered along the banks during breaks, sharing food and gentle conversations. They rested their feet in the cool streams, letting the water carry away the warmth of the day. Sometimes the conversations drifted into soft jokes about whose buffalo had wandered into whose field, or whose sandals had floated away during a sudden current. Everything was spoken with ease, like threads, weaving through the tapestry of daily life. Evenings cast another charm upon the irrigation systems. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the water captured shades of gold, rose, and lavender. Lanterns lit in the distance reflected on the paddies in warm flickers, trembling gently with each breeze. The fields settled into a hush, and the people settled with them. Sitting on the bow, listening to the water murmur through the channels, they felt the weight of the day drift away. In those moments, the world felt beautifully simple. Just the soft glow of lanterns, the quiet rustle of rice leaves, and the tender song of water finding its way home. The steady rhythm of irrigation carried through the night, even as the villagers slept. Water flowed with the gentlest persistence, nourishing the fields with a lullaby that seeped into the dreams of those who lived nearby. It moved not in haste, but in harmony, allowing the land to rest while continuing its ancient duty. It was said that some people slept best on nights when the water ran especially smoothly, as if the earth itself were humming a bedtime song. And truly, that rhythm, the calm, steady pulse of ancient irrigation, is what supported entire civilizations. It brought stability to harvests, security to families, and peace to communities. The muong, the bo, the jay were more than constructions. They were lifelines wrapped in tranquility. They invited balance, encouraged patience, and whispered softly to every generation that life could be lived in a gentle, sustainable flow. And so through this quiet art, water became the heart of the fields. It moved with purpose, with softness, with a peacefulness that lulled even the land into calm. In guiding water, the ancient farmers discovered how to guide themselves toward harmony, toward stillness, and toward a life lived in the tender rhythm of the earth. A rhythm that soothed, a rhythm that sustained, a rhythm that sang the fields gently into rest. Chapter 4. When the fields found their voice, the exquisite tools of ancient labor. There is something deeply soothing about the quiet clink of metal meeting earth, a soft, steady rhythm that seems to echo through time like the gentle heartbeat of ancient fields. Long before machines hummed or engines roared, people worked with tools so simple, so graceful, and so patient that they almost felt alive. In the stillness of early mornings, when mist hugged the paddies and the world had not yet fully woken, these tools spoke in a language of soft taps, slow arcs, and peaceful, deliberate movements. If you listen closely in your imagination, you might hear that language now. The smooth swoosh of a bronze blade cutting through stalks, the muffled thump of a hoe lifting soil, or the quiet scrape of a plow drawing a long, thoughtful line across the earth. These sounds were not harsh or hurried. They were calm, grounding, and strangely melodic, like a gentle lullaby sung by the land itself. The ancient bronze tools, plows, sickles, hoes, were crafted with a care that reflected the intimacy people shared with their fields. Each tool had its own personality, its own quiet charm. The bronze plow, sturdy and confident, carved through the soil with a steady determination. The sickle, shaped like a soft crescent moon, moved with a dancer's grace as it harvested the ripened stalks. And the hoe, patient and reliable, loosened earth with the slow, rhythmic persistence of someone humming a familiar tune. Farmers often said their tools were like old companions, dependable, loyal, and always ready to help, no matter the weather, the season, or the mood of the day. Some joked that the tools knew their fields better than the farmers did. After all, a bronze plow spent far more time touching the soil than any pair of human feet. And the sickle, finely sharpened and curved, probably knew every rice stalk by heart, recognizing each one by the way it leaned in the breeze. These tools did more than break ground or cut rice. They transformed the way people lived. With their help, work became smoother, easier, less harsh on tired muscles. Productivity rose, allowing farmers to rest just a bit more, smile a bit longer, and maybe even slip in an extra story or two during breaks. Children watched their parents work and marveled at how beautifully the bronze glimmered under sunlight, like small fragments of the sun brought down to the fields. Crafting the tools required skill, patience, and an understanding of bronze that bordered on affection. The process was slow and deliberate, melting, shaping, cooling, polishing, all performed with the same calming attention that farmers later gave to their crops. And when a new tool was finally ready, it was treated with gentle respect, tested with soft strokes, and welcomed into the rhythm of daily life as though it were a new friend joining the family. Once in use, each tool developed a kind of quiet character. Some plows cut through soil with smooth confidence. Others needed a little coaxing, especially on mornings when the ground was stubborn. Sickles sometimes hummed their own sweet tune as they sliced through stalks, creating a soft chorus that blended beautifully with birdsong. Hoes wore down slowly, their blades growing rounder with love, their handles polished by countless hands, until they felt warm even on cold days. There was humor, too, in the companionship between farmers and their tools. Someone might claim their plow refused to work unless they complimented it first. Another might swear their hoe had a secret talent for hiding itself just when needed most. And every farmer, at least once, had swung their sickle with such enthusiasm that it sent a clump of grass flying straight into their face, much to the delight of anyone watching. Yet beneath the laughter there was always gratitude, for these bronze companions carried much of the burden. They spared human backs from the harshest strains, allowing people to work longer without exhaustion. They made harvests more plentiful, fields more manageable, and seasons more predictable. They helped shape communities, feeding families, strengthening villages, and supporting the rise of cultures across the lands where rice thrived. When the fields grew golden in late afternoons and the breeze whispered through the stalks, the tools rested quietly in the shade, their metal catching tiny sparks of fading daylight. The farmers often sat beside them, enjoying a moment of peace. The air smelled of warm earth, and the world seemed wrapped in a soft blanket of stillness. It felt as though the land, the people, and the tools were breathing together, sharing one harmonious rhythm. During evenings, the tools were cleaned gently, wiped down with cloth, and laid aside with care. Children sat close, watching the ritual with sleepy eyes. The bronze glowed warmly in the lantern light, as if holding on to memories of the day. Parents sometimes told stories about legendary tools, plows that carved perfect lines, sickles so sharp they cut shadows, hoes that never tired no matter how many seasons passed. These tales were whispered like bedtime stories, soothing the children as they drifted toward dreams of green fields and shining blades. Even through countless years, the tools remained steadfast. They endured sun, rain, wind, and muddy days that would make anyone want to go back to bed. But they never faltered. They were, as people like to say, the bronze helpers who stayed loyal from one sunrise to the next, working quietly, without complaint. And in their steady presence, the fields found their voice, a gentle voice shaped by the soft strokes of metal on earth, by the whisper of bronze slicing through rice, by the tender ways humans and tools shaped each other's lives. Through these ancient companions, the land learned to flourish. Through them, work became art. Through them, the fields truly began to sing. As the days slipped gently from one to the next, the relationship between the farmers and their bronze tools deepened into something almost poetic. Every sunrise carried with it the familiar anticipation of movement, the slow lift of a plow, the soft arc of a sickle, the steady upward push of a hoe cutting into soil that yielded with a sigh. There was a harmony to it all, a quiet orchestration of labor and rest, of metal and mud, of human hands working side by side with the earth. It was said in those ancient villages that a tool remembered every touch it received. A plow, after years of guiding through soil, learned the shape of the land as well as the land learned the shape of its blade. A hoe, handled by the same family over generations, became polished to a warm sheen, as though it carried the memory of every harvest in its smooth grain. And the sickles, oh, the sickles, seemed to hum with a kind of gentle pride each time they sliced cleanly through a cluster of ripe stalks. Farmers joked that the sickles were the singers of the fields, always ready to perform a soft, metallic lullaby. These tools did not simply support farming, they gave it rhythm. The land responded to their touch with gratitude, loosening under the plow, opening to receive seeds, rising in fragrance as the earth turned. Farmers moved with a fluid familiarity that mirrored the tool's movements. Each gesture learned from watching the older generation work. The cycle continued, a tender choreography, repeated across seasons, years, and lifetimes. In the late afternoons, when the sun stretched across the sky in soft, golden ribbons, the tools carried a glow that made them appear almost alive. The bronze shimmered, catching sunlight as if holding onto the warmth a little longer. Farmers rested against the shade of nearby trees, wiping sweat from their brows and smiling at the neat patterns carved into the soil, patterns their tools had shaped, gentle as brush strokes on canvas. Sometimes during these quiet breaks, light-hearted stories drifted among the workers. One man would swear that his hoe had a mischievous spirit, always ending up on the opposite side of the field from where he swore he left it. Another would claim his sickle worked best only after being spoken to kindly, and someone else would proudly announce that their plow had carved the straightest line in the entire village, though everyone knew it was slightly crooked and simply pretended not to mention it. But beneath the laughter lived a deep appreciation. The ancient people understood that these bronze companions transformed the way they lived. They made tasks smoother, made harvests larger, made the workdays feel less like battles and more like gentle conversations with the earth. The tools strengthened communities as much as they strengthened soil. They gifted people time to rest, time to talk, time to listen to the breeze brushing through the paddies, time to simply be. When storms approached, families carefully brought the tools indoors, wiping them dry and storing them as if tucking in old friends for the night. Rain drummed softly on rooftops, and the tools lay still in the warm glow of lantern light, reflecting tiny flickers that danced like sleepy fireflies. Children would sometimes curl beside them, tracing their shapes with small fingers, dreaming of the day they would learn to hold them properly. The bond between the people and their tools extended far beyond utility. It became a quiet reminder that life flowed best when supported by steady, reliable companions, whether made of bronze or made of love. Farmers carried these companions proudly, the way one carries a treasured keepsake. Even worn tools, chipped or dulled, were rarely discarded. They were repaired with patience, sharpened with care, honored for their service. As seasons passed, the fields began to speak in ways only the farmers understood. A certain angle in the soil might whisper of dryness. A faint change in the color of stalks might murmur about nutrients needed. And always the tools knew how to answer, through deep furrows, gentle cuts, and calm strokes. It was as if the bronze itself held wisdom, transmitted through the hands of those who used it with respect and tenderness. The soundscape of the fields became a quiet symphony. The plow whispered with deep, grounding notes. The hoe added percussive taps, soft, steady, reassuring. And the sickle sang high, shimmering tones that fluttered through the warm air like ribbons of sound. Together, they formed the voice of the fields, a voice that lulled generations into peaceful sleep and accompanied them through waking hours. In the evenings, as the sky softened into shades of lavender and dusk embraced the horizon, the tools were arranged on wooden racks or leaned gently against the walls of simple homes. Their silhouettes glowed under lantern light, exuding a calm presence that soothed the tired heart. Farmers sat beside them sipping warm tea, listening to the quiet hum of night settling across the land. The tools, after all, were part of the family. They shared every sunrise, every muddy afternoon, every golden harvest. They endured heat, monsoon rains, and the stubborn weight of heavy soil. They worked without complaint, without pause, without asking for anything except a careful hand to guide them. Because of the tools, the land yielded generously. Because of the tools, people lived with stability and hope. Because of the tools, ancient civilizations rooted themselves deeply into the earth, rising slowly, peacefully, beautifully. And so the bronze companions stood faithfully through the passing of time, whispering their soft, metallic lullabies across generations. They were strength wrapped in quietness, endurance shaped into form, and devotion forged into bronze. A gentle chorus in the field's eternal song. A soft voice in the earth's tender breathing. A companion in every sunrise and every rest. Chapter 5. The Old Rhythms of Work. A society shaped by the rice fields. There is a special softness in the way ancient societies grew, not suddenly, not loudly, but slowly, like a gentle tide rising over smooth sand. And nowhere is this softness more visible than in the world shaped by the rice fields. Picture the early mornings, mist drifting like silk across the paddies, birds stirring awake with faint chirps, and an entire community stretching into its day with the unhurried comfort of people who know exactly what rhythm guides their lives. A rhythm set not by clocks or calendars, but by water, soil, sunlight, and the tender pace of growing rice. Long ago, as wet rice agriculture blossomed across valleys and river plains, something beautiful began to take root, not just in the fields, but in the hearts of the people. At first, families worked simply to survive. They planted, they tended, they harvested, each season carrying them gently into the next. But as rice production became more stable and abundant, a transformation bloomed like a quiet sunrise. Labor, once undivided and shared by all, began to branch out into different shapes. Little by little, the fields inspired new kinds of work, new roles, new rhythms that intertwined to form the earliest threads of social structure. It didn't happen dramatically. No trumpets announced the arrival of social roles. No grand speeches declared that one person would plow while another crafted tools. Instead, it unfolded like petals unfurling, naturally, gracefully, almost as though society itself had decided to stretch and find comfort, the same way someone settles deeper into a warm blanket. One farmer with steadier hands than the rest might become the village's seed selector. Another, whose back seemed made of steel, would take on the plowing of the toughest patches. Someone with sharper eyes learned to read the water's flow and soon became the community's go-to person for irrigation issues. And then, of course, there was always that one neighbor who mysteriously arrived only after the hardest part of the work was finished, yet somehow always found themselves in charge of supervising. Communities accepted all these variations with warm amusement. Over time, as agriculture strengthened, these small distinctions grew into clearer roles. A kind of gentle labor differentiation took shape, guided not by strict rules, but by natural ability, personality, and a touch of humor. People began to specialize: tool makers, potters, weavers, gatherers, carpenters, and those who oversaw grain storage so carefully you'd think they were guarding gold rather than rice. And thus, social structure emerged, not rigid, not oppressive, but woven like a soft mat laid out beneath the feet of daily life. Each person found a place where their strengths could flourish, and these places formed the subtle architecture of ancient community life. Everything still revolved around the rice fields. Even the busiest craftspeople paused their work when the planting season approached. Even the more scholarly members of the village, the ones who loved sitting under shade trees reciting stories, would wander out to the paddies when harvest time came, trying their best not to accidentally whack themselves with a sickle. No matter how diverse occupations became, the rhythm of the year remained tied to rice. This shared schedule was a kind of quiet glue, binding every person into the same slow-moving cycle of seasons. It didn't matter if someone spent most days sculpting clay or sharpening bronze. When the fields called, everyone returned. The village moved as one, planting, tending, harvesting. These moments unfolded like communal breathing. You could feel the unity in the air, soft as drifting pollen. Even children grew up understanding this rhythm long before they understood their own roles in life. They learned the seasons the way one learns lullabies, effortlessly, with joy. They watched the adults shift gently between tasks, laughed at the playful banter exchanged between workers, and mimicked different jobs in their games. One child might pretend to command an entire irrigation system with grand sweeping arm gestures, while another dragged a stick behind them like a plow, humming dramatically as though the fate of the world depended on their tiny furrow. The elderly, meanwhile, served as living libraries, carrying memories of good harvests, bad floods, legendary buffalo mishaps, and clever irrigation fixes that saved the fields more than once. They spent warm afternoons teaching the younger generation how to judge soil by touch, how to read the wind, how to listen, truly listen, to the rustle of rice leaves whispering secrets about the coming season. Their stories were soft, steady, and comforting, like the final notes of a lullaby, floating through the twilight air. As the social structure grew clearer, cooperation blossomed in ways both practical and tender. A potter made sturdy vessels for grain. A carpenter crafted wooden gates for channels. A weaver produced mats for drying rice. And farmers, in return, shared their harvest with those who supported the agricultural heart of the community. No one lived alone in their craft. Every role was entwined like threads in a woven basket. There was no sense of superiority among roles, only different kinds of usefulness. After all, who could claim importance over someone who made the very tools that kept fingers safe from thorns, or over the person who repaired the gate that prevented half the field from draining unexpectedly in the night, or over the weaver whose mats kept rice dry during unpredictable storms? People understood instinctively that the strength of the village came from the harmony between every task, not from any single one. Harmony. This was the quiet beauty of ancient rice societies. Everything moved together, everything supported everything else, each role adding its gentle note to the music of daily life. And through this harmony, communities grew, not by expanding outward, but by deepening inward. Like rice roots anchoring into soft soil, people found stability in shared rhythms, shared labor, shared stories, and shared rest. The rice fields were more than fields. They were the pulse of the village, the gentle drum beat that kept society breathing in time. As the seasons cycled through their quiet dance, the diversity of work within the village unfolded more clearly, weaving itself into the daily life of everyone who lived near the fields. Each person contributed something meaningful, something gentle and steady, something that allowed the community to move forward with ease, as though guided by an invisible breeze flowing above the paddies. The farmers worked closest to the earth, their hands sinking into warm soil each morning with practiced tenderness. But surrounding them were countless others who supported the process in subtle, essential ways. The potters shaped clay into large storage jars, smoothing the rims with calm fingers and humming soft songs that echoed the rhythm of spinning wheels. Blacksmiths heated bronze until it glowed like a miniature sunrise, striking it with steady taps that rang across the village like the sleepy chime of distant bells. Carpenters carved handles for tools, their shavings curling like thin ribbons on the floor, soft as scattered feathers. These roles, though different in shape and task, flowed together naturally, forming the quiet architecture of society. Even those who worked far from the fields, such as storytellers, healers, and elders, were still tied gently to the schedule of the rice. When planting season arrived, the whole village leaned toward the fields. When harvest season came, everything else paused, like the world holding its breath before releasing a long, contented sigh. In this way, no one ever felt detached from the communal rhythm. A weaver might spend most days making baskets, but when the rice needed drying, they would lay out their woven mats with pride, watching the golden grains spill across them like warm sunlight. A carpenter might spend weeks repairing homes, yet still take time to help mend the old wooden gates along the irrigation channels. Even children had their tiny roles, chasing birds away, often unsuccessfully, carrying messages between workers, and handing cups of cool water to tired adults. Life was soft, gentle, and continuous. The village did not divide itself sharply into classes or hierarchies. Instead, it formed a flexible tapestry, threads interwoven, supporting each other simply by existing together. People did not measure worth by titles, but by presence, by the way someone laughed with others during lunch breaks, by how steadily they held a plow, or how lovingly they shaped clay into a jar meant to cradle the season's harvest. And though work filled much of their days, joy was never absent. Breaks were frequent, woven into the tasks like breaths between notes in a song. Workers gathered under trees, wiping sweat from their brows, sharing small jokes that floated softly in the breeze. Someone might tease the potter about accidentally making a lopsided jar, to which the potter would smile and claim that the jar simply had character. Another might boast about how straight their furrows were that morning, only for a friend to remind them gently that their buffalo had wandered off halfway through. Laughter, light, warm, and affectionate, was one of the village's most abundant resources. As evening descended, the entire community seemed to dissolve into a gentle hush. Smoke drifted lazily from cooking fires. Conversations softened. The rice fields darkened into smooth sheets of shadow, their edges brushing softly against moonlight. And one by one, the villagers returned to their homes, their hearts full from a day shaped by connection to the land, to one another, and to the quiet rhythm stitched into every season. The elders especially embodied the essence of this peaceful society. Sitting by entrances or near flickering lamps, they shared stories about the old days, their voices slow and steady like ripples spreading across still water. They spoke of years when the harvest overflowed and years when storms tested their spirit. They told tales of legendary carpenters, humorous mishaps with runaway buffalo, and clever solutions to tricky irrigation problems. These stories guided the younger generation not through strict lessons, but through gentle reassurance that life could be navigated calmly, patiently, step by steady step. As generations passed, the roles within the community became more defined but never rigid. Children inherited their parents' crafts, yet always with the freedom to choose differently if their hearts pulled them elsewhere. A potter's child might become a farmer. A farmer's child might become a tool maker. No one rushed to push anyone into a certain mold. It was as if the village understood instinctively that harmony grew strongest when work felt natural, when every role, every task, every hand moving through the day matched the inner rhythm of the person performing it. What kept everything balanced was the central truth shared by all. The rice fields were the heart of life, not its ruler, not its strict overseer, but its guiding pulse. Every role existed because the fields existed. Every schedule flowed from the cycle of planting, tending, and harvesting. Even festivals followed the rice. Celebrations erupted when harvests were abundant, their music lifting into the night like warm lanterns, rising into dusk. And during quieter seasons, the village rested, slept, and rejuvenated, just as the land did. This unity created a gentle, enduring strength. People understood their dependence on one another, the way a plant understands its dependence on sunlight and rain. They respected each other not because of rank or wealth, but because every person carried a part of the community on their shoulders. A blacksmith's hammer echoing at dawn was as meaningful as a farmer's first step into a field at sunrise. Through these old rhythms of work, society blossomed, not loudly but softly, beautifully. The rice fields shaped the people, and the people shaped the society, molding it into something stable, compassionate, and calm. Every day felt like a line in a long, peaceful song, one sung with mud-stained hands, warm smiles, and hearts tuned to the unbroken cycle of the seasons. A society born not from force, but from gentle cooperation. A community not built on walls, but on shared rhythms. A life where every task, every voice, every moment flowed like water returning faithfully to the fields. And in this harmony, ancient people found not only survival, but serenity. Chapter 6. The Village Among the Far Fields. A Peaceful, Settled Life. In the quiet hush of early morning, when the mist lies low over distant paddies, a village begins to breathe in a slow, peaceful rhythm. This rhythm, gentle and steady, is the heart of a settlement, shaped by rice fields stretching toward the horizon. From these ancient communities grew the calm, enduring world of settled life, where people found belonging in the soft harmony between land, labor, and one another. The earliest villages rose gently like small lanterns glowing at dusk. They formed not from grand plans, but from families who chose to remain near the fields that sustained them. As rice farming flourished, people discovered the comfort of staying in one place, building homes of earth and wood beside familiar waterways. The quiet decision to settle became the seed from which village life blossomed. In these early settlements, neighbors lived close enough to hear each other's footsteps, close enough to share tools, stories, troubles, and laughter. The sound of a hoe tapping soil, or a child calling to a wandering buffalo, drifted easily across the open spaces. It was a life woven with companionship, where the presence of others felt as natural as sunlight falling on water. Because the village depended so deeply on the fields, people developed bonds rooted in shared purpose. When planting season arrived, everyone worked side by side, moving with the same calm determination. During harvest, the scene resembled a long, slow festival, with neighbors passing bundles of rice and exchanging gentle teasing that made the work lighter. At the heart of this world was trust. If one family struggled with a flooded field, others arrived without hesitation, stepping into the mud as though stepping into their own concerns. If a roof needed repair, hands gathered before the request was spoken. Support flowed as naturally as water through the channels. Evenings carried their own tender charm. As the sky softened, villagers gathered in open spaces, sharing the stories that grew from the day's work. Someone might recount the misadventures of a slippery buffalo, while another described the stubborn weeds that refused to yield. These tales, simple and warm, wrapped the village in soft laughter. In quiet moments, people sat along the edges of their homes, listening to insects hum and watching lantern light shimmer against nearby paddies. The world felt unhurried, as though resting alongside them. Settled life gave them time to breathe, to work, to dream, and to appreciate the quiet beauty of being part of a village. Through the seasons, the rice fields shaped not only their labor, but their relationships. Friendships deepened as people moved in harmony with the same cycles of growth. Children grew up surrounded by gentle guidance and soft encouragement, learning early that community meant standing close, listening carefully, and offering help whenever help was needed. In this peaceful way, the village became more than a place. It was a feeling, a quiet belonging shaped by mornings in the fields, by voices drifting through warm air, and by the certainty that life, though simple, was beautifully complete. And so the settled life blossomed gently, bringing with it traditions woven from comfort and companionship. New homes appeared along the edges of the village, built with hands steady from years of tending the earth. Paths widened under the soft weight of daily footsteps, becoming familiar trails that guided people from one doorstep to another. Every morning, the same quiet rituals unfolded. Someone sweeping the walkway, someone carrying water, someone humming a tune learned from elders. The village woke slowly, letting the day settle like warm dust over its gentle spaces. During midday, when sunlight shimmered brightly across the fields, neighbors rested together beneath the shade of tall trees. They shared fruit, cool water, and stories that drifted lazily in the quiet air. Someone might tease a friend for slipping into the mud earlier, and the laughter would roll like soft thunder across the grass. At night, with the sky unfolding its blanket of stars, the village glowed with warmth. Lamps flickered, sending small golden ripples across the quiet yards. People gathered on doorsteps, speaking softly, telling stories shaped by the fields. These tales of rainfall, harvest, wandering animals, and tiny triumphs painted the canvas of village memory. Through it all, the rice fields remained the heart of everything. They drew people together, strengthened friendships, and reminded everyone that life, when lived in harmony, could feel beautifully effortless. And in this unity, the village flowed through each season with quiet confidence. The people trusted the land, and the land trusted them in return. Every day ended with gratitude. Gratitude for the fields, for the neighbors, for the stories that softened the evening air. And every morning began with promise as the sun rose gently over the paddies, whispering that another peaceful day waited to unfold, slow and serene like a lullaby woven into the heart of the village. Here, where fields met homes and stories met sunlight, life blossomed in the simplest and sweetest ways. And always, the people knew that their strength, their joy, and their gentle peace came from living together season after season in the soft embrace of the rice fields, a harmony that held them warmly through every quiet, ancient year. Always. As seasons circled gently through the years, the village settled more deeply into its peaceful existence. Each cycle of planting and harvest wove another thread into the shared tapestry of daily life. People knew the rhythm so well that it felt as natural as breathing. When the first rains softly tapped the ground, the village stirred with anticipation. When the fields grew tall and green, the people's spirits lifted with them. And when the harvest shimmered like gold against the sky, everyone felt the same quiet pride warming their hearts. Over time, the homes themselves began to reflect this steady harmony. Roofs were shaped to welcome breezes, walls were softened by sunlight, and earthen floors carried the footprints of many generations. The village expanded unhurriedly, like a small tree stretching new branches each spring. New families added their voices to the chorus of daily living, blending laughter, stories, and gentle labor into the familiar rhythm of the settlement. One of the sweetest aspects of village life was the closeness between neighbors. Homes stood near enough for people to greet each other from their doorways, sharing the soft morning air. If someone pounded rice or chopped vegetables, the scent drifted into surrounding courtyards, making conversations spark with playful remarks about whose cooking smelled the most inviting. The village liked to joke that you could tell who was making soup simply by the way the breeze curled through the lanes. Children, meanwhile, filled the open spaces with the bright energy of new life. They chased each other across warm earth, their laughter rising like birdsong above the fields. Sometimes they played games that mimicked the adults, pretending to plant rows of grass, splashing water to imitate flooding the fields, or imitating buffalo with exaggerated snorts. Their innocence brought a lightness that softened even the longest work days. Elders watched with fond smiles, often offering wise but humorous advice. They would say things like, "If you want straight rows, don't plant while giggling," or, "A buffalo never listens, but it always pretends it does." Their gentle teasing reminded everyone that life was not just about work. It was also about warmth, connection, and shared joy. As dusk approached each day, villagers gathered in small groups carrying stools or woven mats to their favorite corners. The air cooled, the paddies reflected fading colors like liquid amber, and the world slowed into a soothing quiet that wrapped itself around the people like a comfortable cloak. Someone might begin a story, usually a well-loved one about a mischievous animal or a clever ancestor. Others listened, smiling softly, adding small comments that made the tale more colorful. Work and storytelling intertwined seamlessly. Many stories grew from the fields themselves, from strange shapes spotted in the mud, from unexpected rainfalls, from the day the buffalo wandered straight into a basket of drying rice. These small moments, humorous and ordinary, became memories the village held dear. They reminded everyone that life, even with its challenges, remained gentle at its core. The central gathering space of the village, usually a wide area shaded by large trees, served as the heart of community life. Here, people sorted rice, repaired tools, celebrated festivals, and shared meals. It was a space that heard countless footsteps and laughter. It echoed with songs sung during harvest and whispered with secrets exchanged between close friends. It was here, in this open place, that the essence of village life reached its most tender fullness. When festivals arrived, the village transformed. Lanterns hung from doorways, casting golden halos onto familiar faces. Families prepared dishes filled with fragrant herbs and steamed rice. Children ran excitedly through the crowds, their hands sticky with sweet treats. Musicians played simple instruments, their rhythms steady and inviting. The festival nights shimmered with warmth, yet still carried the same gentle tone that shaped every day. Though celebrations brought joy, the quieter days were just as precious. The simple act of tending to morning chores, hearing a neighbor call out greetings, or watching smoke curl from kitchen fires filled life with peaceful continuity. People found comfort in the familiar patterns, the way the sun rose behind the same hills, the way the paddies rippled with wind, the way children's laughter returned each afternoon, like a promise. And through everything, the village remained deeply connected to the rice fields. The people drew strength from the land, and the land, in its quiet generosity, offered nourishment and stability. It was a relationship built slowly through seasons of shared patience and gratitude. Even in difficult years, when floods tested their resilience or droughts stretched their endurance, the villagers supported one another, standing firm as a united whole. They believed in their gentle way that a village was not defined by its houses or boundaries. A village was defined by the people who cared for each other, who understood each other, who woke and worked and rested in harmony. It was defined by the way everyone returned, again and again, to the shared rhythm of the rice fields. As night deepened, shadows lengthened across the homes, and lamps glowed with soft amber light. Inside, families settled into quiet conversations or gentle silence. The chirping of insects created a soothing lullaby. The breeze carried faint scents of earth and grain, and above it all, the stars shimmered, watching over the peaceful settlement. In these moments, the village felt complete, wrapped in stillness, warmed by companionship, and carried forward by the timeless rhythm of life among the far fields. Here, in this tender harmony, the people found their serenity. Here, in this quiet world, they found home. Chapter 7. The Echo of Bronze. Drums. Artistry of the Wet Rice Age. In the soft cradle of ancient evenings, when the sky blushed into amber and the rice fields glimmered like half-awake mirrors, a gentle sound often rose through the air, steady, echoing, and warm. It was the voice of the bronze drum, the Jongson drum, beating its calm and ancient rhythm across the peaceful villages of the wet rice world. The sound floated above the paddies, slid through bamboo groves, and settled lightly into the hearts of those who listened. The drum was never loud or demanding. Its voice was clear, resonant, and soothing, like a call from the earth reminding people to breathe, to rest, to remember their place in the quiet harmony of life. It carried a steady pulse boom, 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 neither rushed nor forceful, as if the drum itself understood that life among the rice fields flowed best in gentle waves. To imagine these drums is to imagine a piece of the sky molded into bronze, their surfaces curved smoothly, cool under the touch, yet holding the warmth of countless sunrises, patterns wrapped around them like stories, etched into time, spirals, birds, boats, rice scenes, dancers with lifted arms, frogs frozen mid-croak. Each line whispered something soft, something familiar, something that felt like a memory even to those who had never seen it before. The artisans who shaped these drums worked slowly, tenderly. They melted bronze as though melting starlight, guiding the liquid metal into forms that carried both strength and serenity. The drum was not simply an object, it was a vessel for the heartbeat of the community. When struck, it awakened something ancient and comforting, like hearing a lullaby sung long before one was born. Much of the imagery on the drum reflected daily life in the rice-growing world. Scenes of people planting, harvesting, rowing boats along gentle rivers, or preparing for festivals appeared in soft, looping patterns. Nothing about the designs felt hurried. The lines curled like drifting smoke, forming little worlds where everyone moved with the quiet joy of simple living. There were birds with wide wings sweeping across the surface, perhaps cranes, perhaps herons, gliding as calmly as the real ones that floated above the paddies at dusk. Spiral suns sat near the center, glowing like warm memories. Rows of dancers circled the drum's top, their silhouettes swaying in a slow, eternal rhythm. Even the animals carved with affectionate precision seemed to hum with life. Frogs perched proudly, as if knowing their voices filled the wetlands each night. Every pattern carried meaning, though much of that meaning flowed more from feeling than from explanation. The drum was a portrait of community life. Labor, celebration, art, and nature intertwined. You could sense the warmth of rice harvests, the laughter of festivals, the unity of people moving through seasons as gently as water through channels. When villagers gathered to hear the drum, something magical always happened. People stood quietly at first, letting the sound wash over them. Children grew still, elders closed their eyes. Even the buffalo sometimes paused mid-chew, listening with the solemn dignity only buffalo can manage. The drum beat resonated through the air like a calm reminder that the world, despite its busyness, could still be soft and safe. Farmers especially felt a connection to the drum, for its rhythm echoed the rhythm of their lives. The steady pulse reminded them of hoe strokes cutting through soil, or of water trickling through irrigation lines, or of footsteps pressing gently into wet earth. The drum beat was work and rest and life, all woven into a single echoing breath. Sometimes the drum signaled gatherings, celebrations, or the start of a festival. Other times it simply played because the evening air felt right, or because someone felt the quiet urge to let the sound drift through the fields. No one complained when this happened. The sound was too comforting. Even the night insects seemed to pause for a moment, adjusting their chirps to match the drum's gentle cadence. And always the drum brought people together. Families stepped out of their homes, neighbors greeted one another with soft smiles, and children ran toward the sound with eyes full of curiosity. Under the glow of lantern light, the drum echoed across warm earth, creating a space where stories could unfold. The Jongson drum was, in many ways, the village storyteller. Not through words, but through its deep, calming vibrations. When it spoke, it carried generations of memory. It gathered the essence of the rice fields, the rivers, the sky, the people. It reminded everyone that they were part of something enduring, something that beat softly beneath every moment of their lives. And so, as the drum sang its bronze lullaby across the fields, the village listened, breathing slowly, resting gently, and finding peace in the soft echo of a world shaped by rice, by community, and by the timeless artistry of human hands, guided by quiet hearts. As the bronze drum continued its soft journey through village life, its echoes became part of every milestone that shaped the ancient communities. No event felt truly complete without at least one gentle cadence from its shining surface. Weddings shimmered brighter when the drum sounded its slow blessing. Harvest festivals glimmered with deeper warmth. Even quiet evenings felt touched by something magical when a distant, steady beat drifted through the soft dusk. The beauty of the bronze drum was not simply in its design or its sound, but in the way it carried the spirit of the community. Each time the mallet met the drum, it seemed to bring together everyone within hearing distance. The sound traveled far, rising gently over bamboo groves, across the still paddies, and into clusters of homes scattered along the riverbanks. It was a voice that traveled without hurry, as though savoring the journey through warm, fragrant air. People often said the drum could speak, not in words, of course, but in feelings. Those soft, drifting feelings that made a person stand still for a moment and smile without knowing why. A slow, steady beat meant peace. A slightly quicker one brought excitement, and a sudden pause in the rhythm created a hush of anticipation, like the moment before rain begins to fall. Children grew up learning to distinguish these subtle messages. They would run to elders with excited whispers. "Grandfather, the drum says "The festival is starting soon." Or, "Grandmother, the drum sounds sleepy today." And the elders, amused, would nod sagely as if the drum really had whispered something into their ears. The drum itself held a respected place in the village, often kept on a wooden platform beneath a protective roof. It rested like an honored elder, always ready to speak when the moment felt right. People approached it with calm steps, brushing dust from its sides with soft cloths, polishing its surface until the images glowed in warm bronze tones. They did not treat it as an object, but as a companion, one that carried the stories of countless hands and countless years. When festivals approached, the drum became the heart of preparation. Artisans decorated the gathering place with woven mats, fragrant leaves, and flickering lanterns. Musicians tuned their small flutes and wooden instruments. Children practiced dances, often adding their own charmingly offbeat steps. And through it all, the drum waited patiently, its silent presence already guiding the excitement with its calm weight. Finally, when the first note rang out, deep, soft, resonant, the entire village seemed to exhale. The sound grounded the festival, giving it a foundation as steady as the earth beneath the fields. People clapped in time, feet tapping lightly on packed soil. Dancers stepped into the circle, their movements slow and fluid, mirroring the patterned dancers etched onto the drum's top. Everything, music, bodies, stories, laughter, flowed in gentle harmony. But the drum was not only for celebration, it also reflected the everyday artistry of the wet rice world. Many etched scenes showed farmers bending gracefully over paddies, their gestures rhythmic, patient, familiar. Other images displayed boats gliding across quiet rivers, fishermen casting nets with practiced ease. Some patterns depicted houses on stilts, held gently above the earth like resting birds. The drum captured the softness of life in a way no written text could. Its designs were living poems. Even the animals carved into its surface held meaning. Frogs symbolized the wetlands, their voices filling the night. Birds represented freedom and guidance. Buffalo, sturdy and loyal, appeared with lowered heads, reminding everyone of their indispensable strength. The drum transformed ordinary creatures into symbols of community resilience and joy. Sometimes, after a long day in the fields, villagers would gather around the drum not to play it, but simply to sit near it. They would talk about the harvest, tease each other gently, share food, or rest in comfortable silence. Children leaned against its sturdy frame, tracing patterns with tiny fingers, imagining stories unfolding within the bronze lines. Elders told tales of long-past festivals, of great harvests, of clever ancestors who once danced atop the very patterns now carved into the drum. At night, the drum glimmered softly in lantern light. Its bronze surface reflected warm flickers that made the carved figures appear as if they were moving, the dancers swaying, the birds gliding, the farmers bending toward the earth. The drum seemed alive, breathing in the quiet darkness, holding centuries of memory within its glowing shell. And when the last lantern dimmed and the village drifted into sleep, the drum stood watch, silent, steady, timeless. It needed no sound to remind the people of its presence. Its very shape carried a lullaby. It belonged to the land, to the rice, to the rhythm of life unfolding gently across generations. Thus, the bronze drum was more than an artifact of the wet rice age. It was its heartbeat, calm, resonant, and beautiful, a keeper of stories, a companion to labor, a gentle guide for celebrations, a soft echo of a world shaped by harmony, patience, laughter, and the steady breath of the fields. A voice made of bronze, a rhythm made of life, a lullaby made for the ancient sky. Chapter 8. Grains of Time. The 1,000-year imprint of rice in history. In the soft stillness of dawn, when the sky gently opens its eyes and the earth seems to exhale a long, peaceful breath, a single rice grain glimmers with quiet significance. It is so small, so light, so unassuming that one might overlook it at first glance. Yet within that tiny kernel lies a story stretching across centuries, an ancient tale woven through landscapes, generations, and memories. Rice, humble in form, holds a history as deep as the waters that nurtured it, shaping nations and guiding the gentle rise of civilizations. Long before cities carved their silhouettes against the horizon, long before books documented the world, the people of Southeast Asia turned to the rice plant for sustenance, comfort, and continuity. It offered more than food, it offered stability. Where rice grew, life could settle, villages could take root, communities could breathe softly into the rhythm of seasons. In this simple exchange, grain for care, care for grain, a foundation began to form beneath the earliest societies of the region. From the warm wetlands to the quiet valleys, rice shaped the economic heartbeat of ancient Southeast Asia. Farmers learned how to nurture it through cycles of rain and sun, guiding water patiently through carefully crafted channels. They bent over fields with steady dedication, their reflections shimmering on the mirrored paddies. Harvest after harvest, the grain answered their labor with abundance. Its reliability allowed populations to grow, trade to flourish, and settlements to expand like gentle ripples across a calm pond. In this way, rice became the quiet architect of early economies. It did not demand attention or lavish praise. Its influence settled in the background, steady as the turning of the earth. With each season, it strengthened the delicate threads connecting families, neighbors, and entire regions. Markets grew around it. Traditions sprouted from it. Livelihoods depended upon it. All the while, rice continued to sway in the fields with a serene, almost amused patience, as though it knew it carried the weight of history on its tiny shoulders. Its cultural impact stretched even deeper. In the land that would become Vietnam, rice found a particularly cherished home. The people living between mountains and rivers discovered in rice a partner as enduring as stone yet tender as morning light. It shaped daily life, shaping identity in ways both subtle and profound. For countless generations, Vietnam's cultural essence, its celebrations, its stories, its quiet perseverance, grew alongside the rice stalks rising each year. The grain entered language, rituals, poetry, and the soft lullabies whispered to children drifting into sleep. It symbolized prosperity, tranquility, and the simple beauty found in the everyday. Even the landscape itself mirrored the presence of rice, with villages nestled between terraced fields, curving like gentle green waves. Each terrace held not only crops, but memory of hands that worked, of feet that trudged, of hearts that hoped. Through centuries of change, rice remained steadfast. It was present during peaceful eras when communities flourished and festivals filled the air with warm fragrance. It was also there during difficult times, grounding people when the world felt uncertain. Just as a single grain could grow into a field, the quiet resilience of rice mirrored the quiet resilience of the people who cultivated it. In moments of hardship, they looked to the paddies, not for grandeur, but for reassurance. And the land answered with the same steady rhythm it had always offered. This endurance gave rice a symbolic strength that far exceeded its size. It became a testament to persistence, to balance, to the quiet determination required to sustain life through storms and sunshine alike. The Vietnamese people came to see rice as more than nourishment. They saw it as a companion, one that walked with them through history's shifting tides. Even as new influences entered the region, rice culture remained at the heart of life. The traditions surrounding planting and harvesting formed a language all their own, a language spoken through shared labor, shared rest, shared gratitude. The fields became places where stories were exchanged, where children played, where elders reflected, and where generations wove themselves into the living fabric of the land. This deep connection between rice and identity continued to strengthen over time. In every grain, people recognized echoes of their ancestors' footsteps. In every planting season, they felt an unbroken link to the past. The rice fields became a collective memory that stretched far beyond any single lifetime. To walk among them was to walk within history itself, quiet, expansive, familiar. And so, through centuries upon centuries, rice carried the mark of endurance, whispering its presence into every corner of Southeast Asian life. With each harvest, it renewed the bond between people and earth, reminding them that despite the sweeping passage of time, some truths remain cherished, delicate, and eternal. A small grain, a great story. A gentle imprint carried lovingly through 1,000 peaceful years. The story of rice continued to ripple outward, touching not only fields and families, but shaping wider histories in ways both subtle and profound. As early societies grew, rice served as the gentle thread linking distant communities across rivers, mountains, and coastlines. Canoes carried sacks of fragrant grain between regions, their wooden hulls gliding calmly through waterways. Traders exchanged rice for tools, pottery, or woven cloth, creating relationships that formed the earliest foundations of regional cooperation. Nothing about this growth was rushed. History unfolded with the same slow grace as ripening paddies. People learned from one another, techniques of irrigation, ways to store grain, methods for selecting the best seeds. The knowledge passed between villages like whispered lullabies, soft but enduring. In this quiet exchange, rice became a cornerstone of culture, not through triumph or conquest, but through shared understanding and gentle continuity. Its role in shaping identity deepened as generations walked the same paths between homes and fields. In Vietnam especially, the grain intertwined with the people's sense of belonging. The land breathed rice, and the people breathed with it. Festivals emerged, celebrating the harvest, filled with songs that drifted across the night like shimmering threads of memory. Elders taught children how to cup soil in their hands, how to feel the moisture, how to read the wind. These teachings created not only skilled farmers, but individuals deeply rooted in the rhythm of the earth. Even the landscape itself mirrored the unique imprint of rice culture. Terraces climbed mountainsides in gentle steps, each one a cradle for new growth. Flooded paddies stretched across valleys, reflecting sky and cloud with quiet dignity. Villages nestled between these fields grew into strongholds of shared heritage. With every passing season, rice shaped the contours of the land, molding ecosystems and human settlements alike. And through each transformation, the grain remained a quiet companion. It did not seek glory or grandeur. It simply grew year after year, offering nourishment with unwavering consistency. This resilience continued through storms, droughts, migrations, and shifting powers. Rice became a symbol of survival, not dramatic survival, but calm, steady endurance, the kind that hums like a soft lullaby beneath the louder movements of history. As centuries passed, rice also became a keeper of stories. Each grain harvested held memories of effort, patience, and care. People believed, half seriously and half teasingly, that rice soaked up the voices of those who tended it, storing them like tiny echoes. Perhaps that is why some said a bowl of rice could comfort the tired heart. It carried whispers of reassurance from countless hands that had guided it from seed to harvest. Food, after all, is more than sustenance. It is memory made edible, and rice, with its gentle flavor and familiar warmth, held stories stretching across millennia. A simple meal carried within it the labor of ancestors, the laughter of families, and the quiet resilience that allowed communities to thrive through changing eras. The symbolic meaning deepened further as rice became associated with prosperity, peace, and continuity. Gifts of rice were exchanged at celebrations. Bowls of freshly cooked grains marked new beginnings. Offerings of rice honored wisdom, gratitude, and remembrance. In every gesture, rice served as a reminder of the intimate relationship between people and the land that sustained them. And still, rice remained humble. It never declared itself a symbol, never demanded recognition. It simply existed, quietly anchoring culture, grounding identity, and flowing through the centuries like water through the channels of an old village. Its presence was so constant that people sometimes forgot how deeply it shaped their world, until they paused, breathed in the scent of a warm harvest, and felt history quietly blooming beneath their fingertips. Today, when we look back across the long stretch of time, rice stands as one of the most enduring companions in human history. It has fed bodies, guided communities, inspired art, and strengthened identities. For Vietnam, it has become not just a crop, but a quiet emblem of persistence and grace. It reflects the nation's enduring spirit, resilient like roots, clinging gently but firmly to the soil, graceful like stalks swaying under the tender touch of wind. And just as one grain can lead to a field, one season to another, rice continues to remind us of the beauty of steady growth. Not dramatic revolution, but slow, patient transformation. Not loud declarations, but gentle rhythms that shape life from within. A companion across centuries. A memory carried in every harvest. A soft, shimmering symbol of the 1,000-year journey of a people. And through it all, the grain remains. Humble, glowing, eternal, whispering its delicate lullaby to the unfolding story of time. Where the fields become forever, a gentle farewell
to the ancient wet rice world. In the soft embrace of twilight, when the last threads of sunlight drift lazily across the earth, the ancient wet rice civilization seems to rise again like a quiet memory floating above the fields. It was a civilization of water and earth, of patient hands and steady hearts, born thousands of years ago along the gentle currents of the Yangtze River before flowing peacefully into Southeast Asia, settling warmly into the land that would one day be called Vietnam. Unlike the grand empires built with stone or steel, this civilization grew from something far more delicate: a grain of rice resting lightly in the palm, waiting for the touch of rain and the warmth of sun. From this small beginning came wonders. Through skillful cultivation, clever irrigation, and finely crafted tools, the people coaxed abundance from the fields. Water whispered through handmade channels. Bronze blades glimmered under soft daylight. The earth opened gently as farmers pressed seedlings into the warm mud. Season after season, these rhythms wove themselves into daily life, shaping communities where cooperation was as natural as breathing. Villages rose, not with noise, but with the quiet solidity of people staying close to the land that sustained them. And in that closeness, something beautiful took root: a stable society, a tender culture, a lasting way of life. The wet rice world was never in a hurry. Its heart beat slowly, like a lullaby carried on evening wind. Every harvest came not as a surprise, but as a familiar friend returning home at the same time each year. People lived in harmony with the flowing water, the drifting clouds, the turns of the season. Their stories were soft, their celebrations warm, their laughter carried across the fields like drifting seeds. Even their tools seemed to hum with contentment after a long day's work. What made this civilization truly remarkable was not its scale, but its serenity. While other worlds battled and boasted, this one nurtured, tended, and endured. The grain of rice, small, humble, almost shy, became the quiet backbone of culture, economy, and identity. It shaped not only landscapes, but hearts. It taught patience, unity, and gratitude. It whispered that the simplest things often carry the deepest truths. In Vietnam especially, rice became more than food. It became memory, identity, a thread connecting the present to countless generations before. From lush, terraced hillsides to mirrored paddies glowing beneath the moon, the wet rice legacy shaped a people who understood the beauty of perseverance and the comfort of gentle routines. Even now, when modern life moves faster than the rivers that once cradled the fields, this ancient rhythm continues to echo, soft, steady, soothing. And so, as we say farewell to this journey through misty paddies and bronze-lit mornings, let us hold on to the quiet wisdom the ancient rice world has offered. May its calmness settle into your thoughts like warm sunlight resting on water. May its stories drift around you like soft wind through ripened fields. And may its gentle humor, like a buffalo refusing to hurry, or a frog croaking slightly out of tune, bring a small smile to your night. Thank you for walking through this peaceful history with me. May your dreams be easy, your heart be light, and your rest be deep. Good night, and may you sleep as softly as a breeze gliding over quiet rice fields.